In this video, we're going to do some more examples of finding values for theta in standard position, and we're going to continue to work in degrees here, between 0 degrees and 360 degrees. And what's different about these questions is we have an extra piece of information here which will restrict which quadrant our answer can be in. So we'll start the same way. We're going to start by finding the reference angle, so that's going to be the sine inverse of the ratio, ignoring the negative, because the negative only tells us which quadrant we're in. So sine inverse of 0.192 is 11.1 degrees to 3 significant digits, so 11.1 degrees. Now we need to figure out which quadrant. So we're going to draw our quadrants here, and we have a negative sine value. So sine can be negative in quadrant 3 or quadrant 4, wherever the y is negative. Then we have the second piece of information which says tan of theta is also less than 0, or also negative. So tan can be negative in quadrant 2 because the x and y have different signs, or quadrant 4 because the x and y have different signs. So the only quadrant where both of these things are true is quadrant 4. So the angle we're looking for is in quadrant 4. So in quadrant 4, the angle theta is equal to 360 degrees minus our reference angle. So in this case, that's 360 minus 11.1 degrees, which gives us 348.9 degrees. And if we want to check that answer, we have to check two things. First, the sine of 348.9, and we get negative 0.193 or 1925, so close, and because of the rounding we can't get exactly the same thing, so that's correct. And then we also have to check the tan of that, so the tan of 348.9, and you'll notice that it's negative. The size of the answer doesn't matter, but we will just want to make sure it's negative. So indeed we fit the criteria for our question there. So we'll go ahead and solve a couple more of these. Secant theta is equal to 2.047, but we need to find the reference angle, and we can't do it with secant. So first we're going to say, well, that means the cosine of theta has to be 1 over whatever secant was, which means the reference angle, alpha, is going to be the cosine inverse of that reciprocal. And if we go ahead then and get the answer, we get cosine inverse of 1 divided by 2.047, and that will tell us we have 60.76 degrees rounded to 4 significant digits as our reference angle. Remember, angle in quadrant 1. So now we need to figure out which quadrant we're in. Secant is positive, means cosine is positive, and cosine is positive in 1 and 4, so we'll just use cosine. Since if secant is positive, cosine is also positive. Cotan negative means that tan is negative, so that's true in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 4. So the only place that both of these things are true is in quadrant 4. And in quadrant 4, our angle is equal to 360 degrees minus our reference angle. That tells me then that theta has to be 299.24 degrees. In the next example, we're told cotan of theta is negative 0.3256. So first, change it to tan theta is equal to 1 over negative 0.3256. So change it to the reciprocal function. Then we find the reference angle. So the reference angle, we ignore the negative. Tan inverse of 1 over 0.3256. Remember, reference angle, negative doesn't matter. That forces our calculator to tell us the quadrant 1 angle, which is what we want. 0.3256 tells us 71.96 degrees rounded to 4 significant digits. Now we have to figure out the quadrant. Cotan goes with tan, so that's negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Cosecant positive, well, that goes with sine. So sine is positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So our answer has to be quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, we know that the angle is equal to 180 degrees minus our reference angle, which is 71.96, which tells us that theta then, if we go to our calculator, 180 minus 71.96 is 108.04 degrees. Our final example then, we're not actually asked to find theta now, we're asked to find the sine of theta, but we're going to do the same procedure. First, we're going to find the reference angle. So that's going to be the cosine inverse of 0.422, which tells us the reference angle is cosine inverse of 0.422, 65.0 rounded to 3 significant digits, 65.0 degrees. Now we figure out the quadrant. So cosine is positive, so that's quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. Then we're told tan of theta is less than 0 or negative, so tan is negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. So our answer is in quadrant 4. So in quadrant 4, we know that the angle is equal to 360 degrees minus the reference angle, which is 65. And so we know that theta then has to be 295 degrees. Now this question wanted the sine of theta, so now our last step is just to find the sine of theta, which in this case is the sine of 295. And that's a calculator task, so sine of 295 is equal to negative, which makes sense because sine is negative in quadrant 4, 0.906 rounded to 3 significant digits. And so that's the answer to D. And that's the end of those examples. Again, if you're having any problems, make sure you get help as soon as possible. There's more practice coming up with these. There'll be one more video covering similar kinds of questions. So there's lots of examples there, but make sure you do some on your own, and we'll see you in the next lesson.